Amazing Millionaire's surprising wedding for his boss exposes a hidden, inspiring love story. Jake Thompson stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie while his thoughts spiraled in endless turmoil. Just days away from marrying Emily, the love of his life, a voice of doubt echoed in his mind. He was a self-made millionaire, transformed from a factory worker in gritty Detroit to a tech startup leader. Yet with extravagance came an unexpected weight, one that seemed to pull him back to the cold concrete jungle where he began. As he exhaled, a mixture of excitement and anxiety gripped him harder than the tuxedo's collar. How could he celebrate when the very foundation of his success depended on the mentorship of Mr. Arnold, the elderly philanthropist who supported his charity for educational equality? The visit with Mr. Arnold this rainy afternoon had unveiled a hidden truth about his late father's dream. A community center for their old neighborhood, a dream long buried under layers of neglect. Conflicting emotions roiled within him. Should he invest in his father's unfulfilled vision, overshadowed by the bright allure of his wedding? The thought dug deep, igniting guilt. The vibrant petals at his wedding venue were a stark contrast to the harsh realities of Detroit. But was he abandoning his roots to chase glamour? What if this day becomes a celebration of shallowness? Jake thought, heart racing. He caught his reflection, two men in one, the millionaire and the man molded by struggle. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The clock ticked ominously, pulling him back from his reverie. Jake's heart thudded loudly, reminding him of the threat looming over Mr. Arnold's charitable foundation from corporate rivals. How could he stand here celebrating while people depending on that charity faced potential devastation? The tension created a tight knot in his stomach, reflecting his dilemma. As they prepared to tie the knot in lavish style, Detroit still bled from injustice. As he stepped into the sunlight, Jake could see the venue, a magnificent hall, enchanting yet hollow. It sparkled like anything he had ever dreamed of, but somehow felt foreign. He imagined his father's smile as he unveiled the community center, Jake's own lavish nuptials now a sobering reminder of dreams deferred. What will it mean if this all turns to dust while I ignore my father's legacy? He questioned, desperation creeping into his voice. An unsettling fear clutched at his throat. Would he be seen as a fraud, a man who traded grit for glitter? As guests began to arrive, the noise of laughter and chatter filled the air, yet Jake felt like a spectator, disconnected from joy as wave after wave of uncertainty washed over him. He stood before his friends and family, yet tension pulsed like a live wire beneath the surface. As he walked down the aisle, his heart ached with an elegance that felt like a bittersweet betrayal. Could he really start this new chapter without addressing the legacy of his father's dreams and the plight of his old neighborhood? The weight of unsaid words loomed, and the very fabric of his happiness felt woven from threads of pain, longing, and duty. Jake's breath quickened. He was a man on the edge. This was the climactic moment that could rewrite everything. But then again, the dagger of reality pulled him back. What would happen if he failed to act? What if his wedding became a masquerade of the person he used to be? In that instant, Jake felt it. The world's heaviness settle over him as he grappled for clarity amidst the shadows of expectation and the flickering light of unresolved dreams. Uncertainty overcome him, and his heart hammered like a tempest. What choice lay before him? As he stood there, the sense of impending revelation pressed down harder than ever, propelling him towards a choice he couldn't yet comprehend. Would he allow himself to be engulfed by the moment, or fight for the truths that mattered? Jake's shoulders tightened as he took an additional step forward, through the vibrant arch adorned with flowers of every hue. Each petal seemed to shimmer, sharply contrasting with the crude realities of his past, but those colors lost their charm in the weight of his internal struggle. He could hear the laughter and applause of friends, the joyful anticipation of Emily's radiant smile, yet they felt like echoes from distant realms, muffled by the storm brewing inside him. Questions grappled for dominance in his mind. He stifled the urge to turn around, fleeing the bright deception of this moment. Was celebrating love truly worth sacrificing the legacy he inherited? Emily looked beautiful, graceful, her bliss was palpable, but would she understand the tug of the past that refused to release him? Each step toward her was a conflicted march between the person he had become and the boy who had clung tightly to his father's dreams. As he reluctantly closed the gap, he recalled Mr. Arnold's words. "To forget where you came from is to lose a part of who you are," the philanthropist had said. In those words lay a stark reminder. Jake's success was a fortunate but lonely triumph, unless he could forge it into something more meaningful. He arrived at the altar, hands shaking slightly as he grasped Emily's. Her warmth was almost overwhelming, and for a moment the chaos in his head quieted. There was joy in her eyes as she looked at him, but that joy threatened to amplify his turmoil. Would she ever be able to understand the shadow he was battling? As they exchanged vows, he felt trapped between passion and duty, between the hopes for a new life and the weight of an old dream. Seconds turned to what felt like hours. Bound to the present, a gaping void opened, yet he continued, words flowing in rehearsed monotony. For better and worse. Each phrase felt disingenuous, as if he were promising happiness while harboring the guilt of unresolved obligations. Suddenly, the question loomed larger. What was the true measure of success? Was it wealth, or the fulfillment of a promise made long ago? Emily's gaze bore into him, confidence and love intermingling. When it came time for her vows, the words flew out like a burst of sunlight, illuminating his doubts. "I choose you, Jake, today and every day," she declared. Her voice echoed, triumphantly breaking through the fog of uncertainty. It was a resolute declaration that challenged him to confront the depths of his own truth. In those few words, she extended a lifeline, making him reconsider both the present and the future. Yet, the thought of his father's dreams hung over him like a storm cloud. At that moment, battling chaos within, while standing at the threshold of union, Jake realized that neglecting the past could tarnish all that he cherished. Would fighting for his father's vision cost him the life he yearned to build with Emily, or could they intertwine in unexpected ways? Suddenly, Jake felt a rush of clarity. Perhaps he could harness his success to uplift others, reconnecting with the essence of who he was and who he wanted to become. It wasn't about abandoning joy for duty. It was about melding the two. As the ceremony progressed and guests cheered their vows, a new fire ignited within him. Yes, he wanted a future with Emily, but he would also reclaim the dream outlined by his father. They would work together. He could feel it in their hands clasped tight. But just then, amid the resounding applause, a familiar figure emerged from the crowd, a journalist he had once considered an ally. The look in the journalist's eyes was not one of congratulations, but rather of inquiry, possibly even suspicion. Jake's heart raced. What could this mean for the life he was trying to build, so precariously perched on a legacy he had yet to fully confront? As uncertainty enveloped him anew, Jake found himself at a crossroads. This was more than just a wedding. It was the moment to confront not only the shadows of his past, but the looming question of whether he could forge a future that fulfilled every part of him. What would he choose to expose as the new reality of his life? As the ceremony concluded, Jake's gaze locked on to that familiar face, tightening with urgency. The next step awaited, one laden with tension, a revelation that could define everything. Jake stood beneath the soft, dazzling lights of the reception, the echoes of cheers still swirling around him. Guests milled about, laughter mingling with clinking glasses, but he was acutely aware of the figure still lingering at the periphery. The journalist's penetrating stare held a weight he couldn't ignore. It felt as if a spotlight had been cast directly upon him, illuminating doubts and fears he had thought were contained within the shadows of his heart. As Emily spoke with her friends nearby, her radiant smile unyielding, questions clawed at Jake. Had the journalist sensed the turmoil beneath the surface? Could an innocuous conversation lead to revelations that might unravel everything he had fought to build? He felt the ground shift beneath his feet. This was not just a wedding. It was a delicate ballet of his past colliding with the future he desired. He excused himself from the cluster of well-wishers, each step toward the journalist laden with a sense of impending confrontation. What did the journalist know? What was he expecting? Jake's mind raced as he recalled how he had once respected this man for his insight and intuition. "Jake Green," the journalist said, his tone neutral but filled with an undertone of challenge. "Congratulations on your wedding. Quite the leap from your father's shadow to a new life, I see." Jake felt the room spin slightly, the contrast between the joy surrounding him and the all-too persistent weight of expectation pressing down. "It's a new chapter," Jake responded, keeping his tone steady despite the prickling tension that enveloped him. "I believe in embracing both the past and the future." "Interesting perspective, but do you think that's truly possible?" The journalist leaned in slightly, the edge of skepticism sharp in his voice. "Can you genuinely pursue your own happiness while carrying the weight of legacy on your back?" The question hung in the air, raw and personal. Jake considered its implications, feeling the pang of sincerity in the journalist's inquiry. Until now, a part of him believed he could navigate both worlds. But was he truly ready to confront the complexities of that duality? "Legacy isn't just a burden," Jake replied, his voice rising slightly as he began to find his footing. "It's a foundation. My father's dreams shaped who I am and opened doors to possibilities I never thought were mine. I intend to honor that while building something new, not just for me, but for others too." As he spoke, he felt a flicker of empowerment ignite within him, a realization that perhaps this moment was not purely about defense. It was an opportunity to articulate his vision and wrestle with the paradox of his existence. "Fine words," the journalist said, his expression unreadable, but his interest visibly piqued. "But will that vision withstand scrutiny? The world of media is relentless. It longs for conflict, contradictions. What's your take when your actions are questioned, when the ideals you profess collide with reality?" Jake squared his shoulders, the contrasting forces of anxiety and determination merging into a single powerful resolve. "Then I will confront those questions. Transparency is key. I'm no longer merely playing a role my father scripted. I'm here to write my own." Before he could hear the journalist's response, Emily approached, her presence like a warm embrace cutting through the cold uncertainty. She sensed the charged atmosphere and placed her hand on his arm, grounding him. "Everything okay?" Jake nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude for her unwavering belief in him. "I'm getting there." As they shared a brief moment, the journalist paused, observing them closely. This was a critical inflection point. Jake could not ignore the path laid before him. It was time to define his narrative, no longer swept away by the expectations of others. Yet, as he prepared to immerse himself fully in the celebration, a nudge of trepidation crept in. How would he balance his pursuit of personal fulfillment with the relentless scrutiny of those who thrived on conflict? The journalist's words echoed in his mind, an unsettling reminder that every step forward could invite deeper challenges. Would he crumble under the pressure, or could he rise like a phoenix from the ashes of doubt? Jake's heart raced as he realized the moment had arrived to fuse his inheritance with a newfound sense of purpose, crafting a story of resilience and conviction that would resonate beyond the noise around him. As the reception continued, he felt a current of urgency swirling within. He was ready to embrace his truth, however uncomfortable it may be. Yet, in doing so, he had to wonder, what hidden truths awaited discovery in his quest for authenticity, and how would they shape the love story he was only beginning to understand? Jake's resolve pulsed through him as he navigated the crowd, clinking glasses and soft laughter draping over him like a veil. The journalist had left him with more than questions. He'd ignited a fire simmering just beneath the surface. The query about his legacy lingered, an uninvited guest that refused to leave his mind. If he genuinely was to carve out his own path, he needed clarity, understanding of who he was beyond just the son of his father. Emily was pulled away by a group of friends, laughing faces around her reflecting joy and camaraderie. Jake welcomed the space, using it as a moment of introspection. He leaned against a nearby wall, watching glittering lights refract in the glasses held by the happy guests. He felt isolated amid the festivity, as if observing a world he had yet fully to engage with. Jake had always prided himself on being more than a mere extension of his father's legacy, but doubts crept in as he recalled the journalist's pointed skepticism. The conversation had been a pull between two worlds, the brilliance of tradition and the chaos of authenticity. Could he truly redefine himself without discarding the lessons learned from his father's journey? In the dim light, he closed his eyes briefly, letting memories wash over him. His father mentoring him through the intricacies of business, steering him clear of ethical pitfalls. Did those teachings lay the groundwork for his own ambitions, or were they chains, binding him to a mold he was meant to outgrow? A sudden clinking of ice startled him from reverie. A familiar face approached, Max, his business partner. "Jake, did I catch you brooding in the corner?" Max grinned, lifting his drink as if in salute. "This is a celebration. You should be enjoying every moment." "Just processing a few things," Jake admitted, the honesty surprising him. "Feels like there's more at stake here than just a wedding." "Oh, don't I know it," Max replied, his demeanor shifting into something more serious. "You've been given an incredible opportunity, man. A chance to show the world that you're not just following in your father's footsteps, but paving your own way." Jake's heart thudded. He was constantly reminded of his privileges, but his friend's words cut deeper. "But what if that way leads me into conflicts I can't navigate?" "Then you adapt," Max answered firmly. "That's what makes you who you are. If you stick to your ethics, lean on your team, and engage openly with others, you'll not only survive scrutiny, you'll thrive. Don't let the fear of exposure dim your light." A resonant clarity formed within Jake. Max was right. There was inherent strength in embracing his truth, painful, complex, and sometimes awkward as it might be. The challenge lay not only in managing external perceptions, but in unraveling the knots within that kept him bound to an image that wasn't fully his. The music shifted to a gentle tune, echoing through his thoughts. He felt a surge of determination, a wave that swept aside burgeoning doubts. He had to share his vision openly, to connect with others authentically, and to dismantle the barriers that had kept his progress stifled. "I've got to prepare for what's coming," Jake found himself muttering aloud. "If my vision is going to withstand any scrutiny, I need to know exactly what that vision is." Before Max could respond, he was drawn back into the thrumming life of the reception. The vibrant atmosphere matched the rhythm of his heart, a beat of excitement mixed with trepidation. But then he caught a glimpse of the journalist again, lingering at the edge of the crowd with a glint of curiosity in his eyes. The encounter had initially felt burdensome, but now Jake felt a challenge, a chance for transparency he was ready to embrace. As the celebration continued, Jake couldn't shake the revelation. He needed to confront not just external adversity, but his internal fears. The journalist's keen observations could propel him into a realm of accountability. He could expose his truth and reshape his narrative. "Tell me," Jake whispered to himself, "am I ready to expose my vulnerabilities?" With that question lingering, he moved toward a gathering of guests, ready to engage. And an individual. In that moment, the scene shifted from mere observation to active participation, a step into authenticity. What awaited him was still shrouded in uncertainty, but one thing was clear. The time had come to face not just the public, but the layers of his own soul. As he approached the group, a thought flashed. Could he still fulfill both his ambitions and the legacy he inherited? Jake's heart raced with possibilities louder than the music around him. The answer would shape not just his future, but also the love story unfolding before his eyes. And he was determined to find clarity, no matter how challenging the path may prove. Jake immersed himself in the crowd, propelled by an unseen force. Each conversation erupted around him like fireworks, illuminating his surroundings. People animatedly discussed business strategies, shared personal anecdotes, and toasted to happiness, an atmosphere of congeniality ripe with opportunity. But for Jake, the real fireworks ignited within, as he wrestled with his internal conflicts while navigating this social maze. He caught snippets of laughter that momentarily pierced through his introspection. Their joy pushed against the barriers he had built around himself, walls crafted out of fear and uncertainty. Could he crack through those barricades? As he approached a small group of colleagues, he felt a familiar flutter of anxiety, a reluctance to step into the limelight he had avoided for so long. "Look who finally decided to join us," a voice called out, drawing his attention. It was Maria, a well-respected figure in his father's company and a long-standing mentor. She offered him a warm, encouraging smile. "We need your insight on an upcoming project. You have a fresh perspective that could really change the game." Jake looked around at the eager faces before him. The weight of expectation pressed against him, a stark reminder of his potential versus what he had chosen to do with it. "Sure," he replied, trying to grapple with the swell of excitement and apprehension. "What's the project about?" Maria launched into an overview of their latest initiative, her passion palpable. As she spoke, Jake felt the urgency of this moment settling in. This wasn't merely a work discussion, it was a chance for him to assert his identity beyond his heritage. What would his contributions mean if they stemmed from authenticity rather than obligation? Imagine a campaign that resonates not just with our shareholders, but also with the community at large. A message that reflects our values without the usual corporate polish, he suggested, his voice steadying with each word. They leaned in, finally captivated. "Exactly!" Maria exclaimed. "We need that kind of voice. You've got it within you, Jake. Don't hide it." As he articulated his ideas, Jake felt a sense of liberation, a softening of those rigid walls. Each suggestion he made built upon the last, constructing a canvas of innovation painted with strokes of his unique vision. He suddenly realized this was the legacy he'd always yearned to create. Not merely a replication of his father's, but a reflection of his own aspirations, beliefs, and values. But deep within, the shadows of doubt still lurked. What if he ventured too far? What if the authenticity he craved led to confrontations with those who championed tradition? The face of the journalist flickered across his memory. He could sense the looming scrutiny that awaited. As the meeting wrapped up, he stole a glance toward the corner where he last spotted the journalist, but he was gone, leaving behind an unsettling emptiness. Jake's heart raced as he pondered what a candid conversation with him could mean. More than just a fleeting challenge, this could be a chance to express the multifaceted nature of his identity. A simple interview with the right questions could illuminate his transformation from heir to innovator. Embrace it, he reminded himself, heart beating faster. This could be his opportunity to articulate not just who he was, but to expose the richness of the green name while shaping it to fit his own identity. Jake made his way through the party, determined to mingle and connect, to publicly lay the groundwork for the narrative he wished to claim. Compelled to weave his truth into the fabric of these conversations, he engaged more deeply with those around him. But the thrill of newfound agency was abruptly undercut when he spotted the journalist again, re-entering the reception, his notebook poised. This time, there was an unmistakable glint in his eye, curiosity intermixed with skepticism. Jake's breath quickened. Was he ready to articulate his evolution and face the potential backlash? As the journalist approached, Jake felt the weight of his own potential clashing with the reality of the moment. Could he bridge the gap between his inherited legacy and his aspirations? The question sat like a stone in his stomach, heavy yet invigorating. It was time to confront both the audience and himself, even as uncertainty loomed. The journalist approached, and Jake felt the instant thrill of vulnerability. "Are you ready for this?" he whispered internally, feeling the narrative of his life shifting under the weight of choice and resolve. The air crackled with anticipation as he prepared to take a bold step into uncharted territory. The defining moment was unfolding before him, and there was no turning back. Jake felt the pressure building, the moment stretching like a rubber band on the edge of snapping. The journalist's gaze was steady, inquisitive, probing, an intense reminder of everything he was trying to articulate. He could either slip into the shadows of convention or risk it all for an authentic portrayal of who he intended to become. "Jake Green, right?" the journalist began, a hint of skepticism lacing his tone. Jake nodded, a knot forming in his throat. "What's your vision for the Green brand? There's plenty riding on legacy in this game." Those words struck at the core of Jake's struggle. Legacy, how he loathed and adored that word. It held his father's expectations like a vice, squeezing the air from his breath. Individuality. He inhaled deeply, letting the questions sink in, contemplating the nuances of his desire to redefine success while honoring the family's name. "I think," he started, finding the impulse to speak before he could second-guess himself, "that legacy is about evolution, not stagnation. I want to redefine what it means to be green, aligning it with values of inclusivity and innovation." There it was, the kernel of defiance wrapped in the truth of his vision. The journalist raised an eyebrow, intrigued, yet tempered by a historian's curiosity. "Sounds ambitious for an heir. What makes you think you can shift the narrative?" The shot hit home, and Jake felt his heart race. This was the moment he dreaded and craved. His voice shook slightly, but he pressed on. "Because I've spent years balancing who I am with who people expect me to be. It's a constant push and pull. If I don't seize this opportunity to express something real, to show that a green can also be different, then I remain just a footnote in a legacy built on tradition alone." The journalist leaned closer, noting the earnestness in Jake's conviction. There was something there, a hunger. "And what if they reject that? What if they prefer the old ways?" "What if they do?" Jake countered, each word pouring out like cool water on his boiling anxieties. "But if I don't try, I'll become a ghost in my own life. I'd rather face the backlash than live cloistered in fear." Those words hung in the air, charged. Jake observed the journalist's shifting expression, an underlying flicker of admiration creeping in, but it was coupled with clear skepticism about Jake's ability to navigate this treacherous terrain. But he felt fortified now, the embers of his self-confidence igniting with familiarity. "Your father's legacy is at stake here," the journalist warned, voice steady as a drumbeat. "Are you ready to face him if the pushback is substantial, to confront an empire built on tradition?" Doubt crept in, but he shook it off, grounding himself in the resolve he'd summoned tonight. "It's my legacy too. I'm not out to dismantle, merely to reshape. to expand what it means to belong in this family business. Interesting stance. I'd expect more urgency from someone standing on such a precipice. Jake's breath quickened. The notion of urgency felt real, all-encompassing. This was not only his potential on the line, but also a test of his values. He had to navigate the narrow passage between honoring his past and forging ahead into the unknown, a quagmire riddled with both opportunity and danger. The brief exchange unearthed an unsettling truth. The more he leaned into authenticity, the more he exposed himself to scrutiny, not just from others, but even from the deeper recesses of his own mind. He reflected on that unseen pressure he felt, the expectation to conform. "Tell me, what do you expect to find by interviewing a Green?" Jake asked, his voice steadied by tenacity. "Are you hoping to uncover more of the same, or something that defies the status quo?" The journalist paused, his expression shifting, curiosity morphing into a contemplative gaze. "I seek the truth." Jake's heart sped up. Truth? Could that word define his metamorphosis? He realized then that it was not merely about his stance in essence, but rather an invitation to forge connections that mingled sincerity with vulnerability. He felt the stirrings of an inner alchemy, the catalyst transforming an heir into a visionary. Suddenly, the atmosphere felt electric. The ballroom noise faded into insignificance as Jake prepared for an exploration of identity beyond the veil of expectations. "Then let's discover it together," he proclaimed, each syllable echoing with fervor. The journalist nodded, and the stakes dramatically shifted. Each moment of vulnerability unearthed Jake's distinct voice, a voice that challenged conventions and embraced the labyrinth of evolving identity. What lay ahead was unwritten, a blank canvas awaiting bold strokes. As the conversation unfolded, Jake couldn't shake the impending sense that the real journey was only beginning, threatening to challenge everything he believed about himself, his family, and the narratives they were all entwined in. The question clung in the air, a breathless whisper of inevitability. What would emerge when the layers of legacy and expectation peeled away? As their conversation deepened, Jake felt a shift within him, as if the layers of both expectation and fear were peeled back, revealing a core he had kept sheltered for too long. He was confronting not just the journalist, but the very foundation of his identity. Every word exchanged was a step further into uncharted territory. The fear of failure was palpable yet thrilling. "Let's talk about the risks," the journalist suggested, leaning back slightly, his tone turning analytical. "Every shift in branding has its costs. Are you prepared to navigate the backlash from traditionalists who hold the Green name as sacred?" The journalist's inquiry stung, but it also ignited something in Jake. Risks were part of evolution, he thought. They were the crucible of growth, and internal conflict birthed greatness. "Yes, I accept that there will be pushback," he admitted, his voice a steadier tone anchored in resolve. "What matters most is what kind of impact I can make." The acknowledgement didn't quench his anxiety. Rather, it served as fuel. He envisioned dissenting opinions, echoed disapproval from family and shareholders, the disapproval shimmering like a specter at the edge of a reflective pool. But still, he felt the ripple of possibility. Every leader faced opposition, and every move toward greatness demanded sacrifices. "Tell me," Jake began, instinctively probing the journalist's perspective, "have you ever risked your freedom for a conviction you hold dear?" His question hung in the air, inviting introspection. It was a tactic to disguise his own trepidation. The journalist hesitated, caught off guard by the question. "In my profession, a commitment to honesty often comes with ramifications. Some stories expose more than intended. But yes, I've had to walk that line." Jake saw an opening here. If someone as steadfast as this journalist wrestled with the stakes of conviction, perhaps the same could be his refuge amidst uncertainty. "And what was on the line for you?" he nudged. A shadow crossed the journalist's face, a fleeting glimpse into personal sacrifice. "My career, my reputation. But in the end, authenticity has always won out." Jake leaned forward, a spark igniting within him. Authenticity was the essence he craved, the pulse that drove him to dismantle preconceived notions about his family and himself. Then we both recognize the value of authenticity in our fields. Whether through journalism or legacy management, it's the willingness to challenge norms that push us forward. "Spot on, but idealism can lead to downfall," the journalist cautioned, his skepticism a cooler breeze against Jake's fervor. "What's your backup plan if it fails? Failure in legacy is not just a setback, it's a blow to your lineage." The weight of those words pressed down, an ache that resonated deeply. But Jake remembered the very essence of his drive, to reshape, not reinvent, to embrace facets of the green legacy that had previously felt stifling. Failure is merely a stepping stone to insight. Each misstep teaches resilience. The linchpin is adapting, and my vision hinges on collaboration, pushing the boundaries of who we are. Jake's heart raced in tandem with the rhythm of his thoughts, finding strength in every vulnerable admission. Each minute detail of his aspirations painted a broader picture of someone eager to emerge from beneath the weight of expectations. He understood now that even conviction required agility, a deft dance between opposing forces. As the conversation shifted to specifics of his proposed vision, his mind began to whirl with ideas, the initiatives he could champion, the alliances he could forge. He envisioned a community engaged in conversation about legacy, positioned at the confluence of family tradition and modern values. This was more than an ambition, it was the pathway to his growth. A jolt of realization struck him then. He was ready to call all the shots in his life, even if the risks loomed ahead like unruly shadows. If authenticity served as his guiding star, it didn't matter what others thought. "I'm going to challenge the green narrative," he declared, the words reverberating with newfound strength. "I'm prepared for resistance, and I won't back down." With those statements, Jake felt like he was stepping into a new skin, a metamorphosis from the shadow to the light, from an heir defined by lineage to a leader charting his course. But would the legacy he envisioned welcome him, or would he find himself banished from the very family he sought to redefine? As doubts crept back into his mind, Jake couldn't shake the impending realization that the next challenge awaited, direct confrontation with the old guard, those who would fight tooth and nail to protect the green name. The time had come to face not just the external forces intent on preserving the old ways, but the very foundation of his identity, an empire he dared to reshape. Would the legacy stand firm, or would he shatter it in pursuit of a new dawn? Jake left the journalist's office, his mind ablaze with possibilities and challenges. The faint hum of the city buzzed in the background, but he was lost in thought, contemplating the myriad ramifications of his declarations. Each step felt heavier as he navigated the bustling streets. He was acutely aware of the journey ahead. The notion of confronting the old guard filled him with a complex blend of anticipation and dread. Jake understood that tradition ran deep within the Green family, woven into its fabric over generations. The elders would likely see his ambition as an affront, a rebellion against the quiet dignity expected of him. Yet within that fear simmered a burgeoning resolve, a fire ignited by his commitment to authenticity. No longer could he exist in the shadows of his family's legacy. He envisioned gatherings where discussion transformed into a dynamic discourse, where innovation flourished within the aging walls lined with portraits of stoic ancestors. As he crossed a familiar intersection, one filled with memories of family gatherings, nostalgia clawed at his heart. Yet those memories felt like chains now, binding him to a past he no longer wished to honor without scrutiny. Arriving at his office, Jake's surroundings, the polished furniture, the subdued color palette, felt stifling. Each detail served as a reminder of the expectations that loomed over him. He settled into his desk, eyes sweeping over the meticulously arranged papers and reports. He needed a plan. More than ever, he recognized that the road to reshaping his family's narrative required evidence-based strategies, stakeholder buy-in, and the courage to unleash turmoil among the comfortable. As the day unfolded, he ran through potential alliances with younger staff members, those hungry for change, untainted by the pressures of the past. Jake's thoughts danced around names, faces, and prospects, uncovering hidden motivations behind their desire to innovate. But how could he connect with them without appearing like another misguided heir? He had to approach them with sincerity, making it clear that he valued their insights. Diving into the logistics of how to engage these colleagues, he drafted an email aimed at fostering a meeting where they could share their thoughts on the green legacy. Each keystroke drew him deeper into his vision, stripping away layers of formality, revealing the essence he hoped to cultivate. "Let's build a dialogue," he read aloud to himself, savoring the taste of collaboration, "and redefine our legacy together." Yet, even as he crafted that message, a nagging doubt threatened his resolve. Would his colleagues reject not just the invitation, but him as their leader? The concept of failure lingered. He had to confront his fear of rejection, a symptom of the high stakes he willingly embraced. That evening, Jake sat alone in his apartment, staring at the blinking cursor on his laptop screen, wrestling with the sentence, "I refuse to be cast aside." The thrum of doubt left him restless, every distraction feeling magnified against the weight of his ambition. Would they respond positively, or would silence echo back as a concrete statement of disapproval? Moments turned into hours until finally he hit send. The hesitance he had felt trickled away, replaced by something tangible, an undeniable initiative. It wasn't just about saving the green name, it was about evolving it, allowing those who understood the modern world to have a voice. As he prepared for bed, the horizon of uncertainty loomed large in his mind. The challenge of engaging with both the old guard and the subordinate voices in his organization was daunting. Could he truly navigate these treacherous waters while remaining true to himself? The next morning dawned, bringing with it the first response, a single email that could pivot the trajectory of his ambitions. Jake's heart raced as he reluctantly opened it, the drumming of his pulse echoing in his ears. What awaited him on the other side of that screen could solidify his courage or send him spiraling into self-doubt once more. Would the response fuel his quest for authenticity, or would it expose the vulnerabilities he feared so deeply? Jake's breath hitched as he read the email. It was from Mia, one of the younger team members he had identified as a potential ally. The message was straightforward, but charged with enthusiasm. She expressed gratitude for the invitation and articulated her desire to contribute to a more inclusive dialogue about the green legacy. Her words lit a path forward, yet they simultaneously intensified the weight of his mission. Others might follow her lead, but he would have to navigate the ramifications. He felt a swell of hope. However, with that hope came an acute awareness of the challenge ahead, the need to strike a careful balance between respecting the traditions that shaped the green name and ushering in a new, more progressive era. The thought felt like walking a tightrope. One misstep could send him crashing down into the critical judgment of elders who had governed the family business with an iron grip. As the day wore on, he found himself reflecting on a different conversation with his mentor, Angela, during a lunch several months prior. Her calm demeanor belied the storm of insight she had imparted. "Jake," she had said, "leadership is not about being liked, it's about being respected. If you want your colleagues to follow you, they need to believe you can lead them somewhere worth going." The weight of those words echoed in his mind. Determined to build on the small victory of Mia's agreement, Jake drafted a follow-up email to the entire team, this time inviting everyone to contribute ideas prior to the meeting. He wrote with intention, emphasizing that each voice deserved to be heard in shaping their collective future. He had no illusions. Bringing together the old guard and the younger voices would be like oil and water. Yet it was a necessary step. He felt the adrenaline surging through him as he clicked send. After the email was dispatched, he turned his focus to the logistics of the meeting. He envisioned an open forum where all participants could share ideas without judgment. Yet, beneath that vision flickered another shadow, his own insecurities about leading such a gathering. What if the old guard dismissed the concepts presented by the younger staff? What if he faltered under scrutiny, revealing cracks in his authority? When lunchtime rolled around, he sought out Mia in the break room. She was pouring coffee, her enthusiasm evident as she discussed her own ideas for revitalizing company branding. Listening to her perspective was invigorating. It reminded him of the younger version of himself, filled with untamed ambition and dreams yet unexplored. He realized that forming an alliance with her, and indeed others like her, might serve as a bridge between the two generations. By the end of their conversation, Jake suggested they collaborate on a presentation for the meeting, an idea that drew a radiant smile from her. This was turning into something more than just a professional endeavor. It felt like a movement. Together, they might not only reshape their legacy, but redefine it. Crucial days passed in the lead-up to the meeting, each filled with preparatory discussions, as he began to see allies emerge from unexpected corners. Yet, he still felt the apprehension gnawing at his insides. Coupled conversations remained marred by whispered uncertainty. There were murmurs in the hallways, reminders that he was a green and expected to toe the line. As the day of the meeting approached, Jake had a penetrating realization. To lead this change, he had to confront the full scope of his family's legacy, to own it and transform it instead of merely seeking approval from the old guard. It meant embracing his roots while being unyielding in his vision for the future. On the eve of the meeting, he lay awake, wondering how he'd face the elders who could dismantle his plans with a mere wave of a hand. He had prepared for a multitude of scenarios, yet the most critical piece remained elusive, convincing the old guard to believe in his vision, not just for the green name, but for the entire organization. Could he emerge from this meeting as the leader he aspired to be? Or was he destined to remain shackled by the weight of legacy? The dawn before the meeting felt ominous, a prelude to the confrontation that was about to unfold. As he steeled himself for the challenge ahead, a single question clawed at him. Was he ready for what might become a definitive moment in his personal and professional evolution? Jake stood at the threshold of the conference room, the sunlight streaming through the tall windows illuminating the polished table where he would soon confront both his past and his future. Glancing down at the agenda he had meticulously prepared, his heart raced with a mixture of trepidation and anticipation. It was time to weave together the fabric of his father's legacy with the new vision that pulsed through him, a tapestry he was determined to make vibrant. The room filled quickly with the known figures of the old guard, guardians of tradition, their faces etched with years of adherence to expectation. As they settled in, the air hummed with tension, the quiet palpable as they awaited his address. Jake cleared his throat, expelling the ghosts of doubt that clung to him. This was not just about pitching ideas, it was about redefining himself in their eyes. "Thank you all for being here today," Jake began, his voice steady, resonating with newfound strength. "We stand at a crossroads where our legacy intertwines with our opportunity for reinvention." The rhetoric felt powerful, pulling the attention of even the most stoic attendees. He launched into the presentation, outlining the need for innovation within the company, a call to honor the foundational work of his father while simultaneously embracing the modern realities they faced. The vision framed the green name not as a constraint, but as a platform from which to build something greater. Each slide depicted collaborations with the community, ethical initiatives, and innovative practices designed to uplift the very community that had nurtured him. Yet as he spoke, he also sensed the subtle resistance. Their glances exchanged whispers of skepticism, doubts veiled behind stoic expressions. He pressed on, driven by a desire to awaken recognition rather than with a need to appease. "We must adapt," he insisted, his voice rising above the usual boardroom cadence. "True success hinges on our ability to engage our roots, but not be confined by them. A legacy should inspire us to be better, not to settle for who we were." As he shared the enthusiastic responses he had garnered from younger staff members, he caught the raised eyebrows and faint frowns. Jake was prepared. He welcomed challenges. He anticipated questions and turned them into a shared dialogue. The old guard challenged his proposals, firing questions aimed at the very heart of his transformation. "What about our existing clientele?" one voice countered. "What if they don't respond well to these changes?" Jake met the gaze of his interrogator, unyielding. "Every brand has a duty to evolve with its audience. Stagnation is the true danger. Think of our community. They rely on us to lead by example, not to dwell in past triumphs." The words simmered in the air, and silence enveloped the room as he continued to defend his vision, fortified with passion. With every interaction, Jake realized he was not just defending ideas, he was asserting his identity. After what felt like an eternity of back and forth, a familiar voice broke through the tension. Maria, who had once stood alongside his father, finally shared her own thoughts. "You're not just dreaming, you're creating a plan," she stated, nodding earnestly. "For the first time in a while, I can feel the energy in this room shift. We need this adaptation." That moment was electric. Jake saw the walls of indifference begin to crumble, a consensus forming among the doubters. As the discussion unfolded, he showed leaders how embracing new ideas could uplift the green legacy, turning it into a story of resilience that could inspire both employees and the broader community. The meeting concluded with an affirmation, a vote of confidence that reverberated through the room. They agreed to pilot his initiatives, combining tradition with innovation, a new narrative for the Green family that promised to honor both the past and the future. As he exited the conference room, Jake felt a profound sense of accomplishment wash over him. He was no longer merely the son of his father. He was Jake Green, a leader carving out a distinctive path, one that would bring change while embracing legacy. The shift illuminated a palpable growth in him, not just professional, but deeply personal. He navigated through the remnants of his father's shadow, emerging from the complexities of heritage to create a narrative that was confidently his own. The anticipation of potential scars from resistance had transformed into relief, a sign that he could pursue success without fear of judgment. Jake also realized he had forged vital connections among the younger staff, rallying them around a shared vision. He had uncovered allies ready to champion change together. There was strength in unity, a lesson he'd long overlooked during his struggles with identity. With a steadfast heart, Jake stepped into the open air of the city. He vowed to uplift through the legacy of his family, the weight of doubt finally lifting. Now he was not just striving for acceptance. He had a mission to redefine success and provide a voice for those who had never felt represented. Jake Thompson was ready to embrace the future, not just as an heir, but as an innovator, a husband, and a man reshaping the reality of where he had come from. Each step felt lighter, fueled by a deep sense of purpose. This was his moment of transformation. It was his story to tell, and he was determined to lead it with integrity. Now it's your moment too. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support, and don't wait even one more second to share.